I stared at my phone in disbelief. 107 missed calls over 15 years. The notification glowed like an accusation reopening wounds I thought had long healed. My family, the same people who abandoned me in a small Colorado town as some twisted joke, now desperately wanted to reach me. The irony was almost painful. For years they had treated me like I was worthless, disposable. Now they were hunting for the person I had become without them. What would they say if they knew their cruel prank had been the best thing that ever happened to me? If you have ever been betrayed by the very people who should have protected you, give this video a like and subscribe. Tell me where you are watching from, because my journey began when I was left with nowhere to call home. Growing up as the youngest in a family of 5 was never easy. My father, Robert, was a stern businessman who believed that toughening up his children was more important than nurturing them. My mother, Linda, passively went along with whatever my father decided, rarely standing up for any of us. Then there were my older siblings, Jack and Amanda. Jack, 3 years my senior, was the golden child, a high school football star who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Amanda, 2 years older than me, usually followed Jack's lead, though occasionally she'd show me kindness when no one was looking. From my earliest memories, I was the family's punching bag. When Jack would steal my toys and break them, my parents would say, "Boys will be boys." When Amanda would blame her mistakes on me, I was punished without question. Family dinners often involved stories about my embarrassing moments, shared for everyone's entertainment except mine. I learned to laugh along, to pretend their words didn't cut deep, but they always did. Our house in suburban Dallas was filled with tension that no one acknowledged. My father worked long hours at his insurance company, coming home only to criticize and command. My mother busied herself with neighborhood gossip and home decoration magazines, finding little time to notice my struggles. Jack and Amanda had their social circles, their achievements, their futures mapped out by our parents' generous support. I was different, quieter, more thoughtful, more sensitive, as they mockingly called it. My interest in cooking was dismissed as impractical. My good grades were expected rather than celebrated. When I won a writing contest in 10th grade, my father merely grunted and said, "Try something useful next time, like business or law." Despite everything, I still craved their approval. I still hoped that one day they'd see me, really see me. I thought maybe they just didn't know how to show love the way other families did. I made excuses for them, convinced myself that deep down they must care. That hope kept me going through high school, through the lonely nights and silent dinners. That hope would eventually be my undoing. The summer after my high school graduation, my father announced we would be taking a family vacation to Colorado. It was unusual, we rarely traveled together, but he insisted it would be good for family bonding before I started community college. Looking back, I should have been suspicious of their sudden interest in togetherness. But I was 18 and foolishly optimistic that this trip might be a turning point for us. The days leading up to the trip, I noticed strange behaviors. Jack and Amanda exchanging knowing glances. My mother packing unusually light for me, claiming it would teach me minimalism. My father repeatedly mentioning how young adults needed to learn independence. Still, I ignored my instincts. I wanted so badly to believe this trip was genuinely for family connection. We set off early on a Saturday morning, crammed into my father's SUV for the long drive from Texas to Colorado. The first day of travel was surprisingly pleasant. Jack only made a few jokes at my expense. Amanda actually shared her snacks with me. My parents seemed relaxed, my father even letting me choose the radio station for an hour. For once I felt included, almost equal. I began to relax, to enjoy the changing landscape and the idea that maybe, just maybe, things were changing for the better. As we crossed into Colorado, the atmosphere in the car shifted. My father and Jack started having hushed conversations. Amanda became unusually interested in her phone. My mother avoided eye contact with me. The knot in my stomach tightened, but I pushed the feeling away. We were almost at our destination, a small town in the mountains where my father had booked a cabin for the week. Everything would be fine, I told myself. Everything would be fine. We reached a tiny town called Pine Ridge by late afternoon on Sunday. The main street consisted of just a few stores, a diner, and a gas station. My father pulled into the gas station, announcing we needed to refuel before heading to the cabin, which was apparently another 20 minutes into the mountains. "Dad, could you grab some snacks for everyone while I fill up?" my father asked, handing me $40. "The whole family seems hungry." Sure, I replied, happy to be useful. I remembered everyone's favorites. Jack liked beef jerky and energy drinks. Amanda preferred chocolate and diet soda. Mom wanted her specific brand of iced tea, and Dad always got black coffee and peanuts. I took my time selecting everything carefully, even adding some chips I thought everyone might enjoy sharing. When I emerged from the store, bags in hand and a smile on my face, my heart sank. The parking space where our SUV had been was empty. I looked around thinking maybe my father had moved to another pump. But the entire gas station lot was deserted except for a couple of local trucks. At first, I thought it was just another prank. They had probably driven around the corner and were watching me panic, ready to jump out and laugh. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. I tried calling my father's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Same with my mother's. Finally, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Jack. Surprise, little brother Harry's your chance to prove you're not a complete loser. Let's see if you can make it back to Texas on your own. Consider it a graduation present from all of us. Haha, I stared at the message, unable to process what was happening. This had to be a joke, a terrible, cruel joke. They wouldn't actually leave me here hundreds of miles from home in a town I didn't know with just $40 and the clothes on my back. But as another 10 minutes passed, then 20, the horrible truth began to sink in. They were really gone. My hands shaking. I tried calling each family member repeatedly. No one answered. Eventually, a text came from Amanda. Don't be such a baby, Graham. Jack and I both had to do this when we graduated. Think of it as a family tradition. But neither Jack nor Amanda had ever mentioned such a tradition. I would have known. This wasn't a tradition, it was abandonment. I sat on the curb outside the gas station, the snacks I had so carefully selected now worthless in my hands. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the unfamiliar street. I was alone, truly alone for the first time in my life. After an hour of desperate attempts to reach my family, my mother finally picked up. Mom, I almost shouted into the phone. Where are you guys? Why did you leave me? Her voice was casual, almost bored. Graham, don't be so dramatic. This is something we planned for you. Your father and I think it's time you learned self-reliance. Jack and Amanda both went through similar experiences at your age. But I'm stranded in another state. I have no money, no place to stay. You have $40, she replied coolly. That's more than enough to get started. Figure it out, Graham. Show some initiative for once in your life. Before I could respond, she hung up. I tried calling back immediately, but she had turned off her phone. In a panic, I checked my wallet. My debit card was missing. So was my ID. They must have taken them while I was sleeping during the drive. This wasn't a spontaneous prank, it was premeditated abandonment. The cold reality of my situation hit me like a physical blow. I was stranded in a mountain town I had never heard of before today, with no ID, no bank card, and only the cash in my pocket. Night was falling, and I had nowhere to go. My first instinct was to go to the authorities. Surely what my family had done was illegal. I found the local police station, a small building with just 2 officers on duty. The older officer, Sheriff Wilson, according to his nameplate, listened to my story with a frown. Son, that sounds like a family matter, not a police one, he said finally. You're 18, legally an adult. Your parents have no obligation to support you anymore. But they brought me here and abandoned me, I protested. He shrugged. Unless you can prove they physically forced you to come, there's not much I can do. Sounds to me like one of those tough love situations. We see it sometimes. I left the station feeling even more hopeless than before. The reality was sinking in. No one was coming to rescue me. No one cared that I was stranded. That night I slept on a bench in the small town park, using my thin jacket as a blanket. The mountain air was cold, even in summer, and I barely slept. By morning I was hungry, stiff, and desperate. The local diner caught my eye, Main Street Cafe. With nothing to lose, I went inside and asked to speak to the manager. A heavy-set man with kind eyes introduced himself as Alex. I need a job, I blurted out. Any job. I can wash dishes, clean floors, anything. Alex looked skeptical. You got any experience, kid? I was honest. No, but I'm a fast learner, and am desperate. Something in my expression must have touched him, because after a moment he nodded. Dishwasher quit last week. Job's yours if you want it. Pays minimum wage, but you'll get a meal per shift. When can you start? Now I said, relief washing over me. Right now, that job saved me. For 2 weeks, I worked longer hours than I had ever worked before. I washed endless stacks of dishes, mopped floors, and took out garbage. Alex let me sleep on the break room couch after he discovered I had nowhere to go. During quiet periods, he even taught me some basic cooking skills. Every day, I tried calling my family. Jack and Amanda sent mocking texts. How does it feel to be on your own, baby brother, still crying for mommy? My father never answered. My mother picked up once more, only to tell me she was disappointed I hadn't figured things out faster. When I told her I had found a job, she seemed almost annoyed rather than impressed. After nearly 2 weeks of saving every penny, I finally had enough for a bus ticket back to Texas. Part of me wanted to never see my family again, but I had nowhere else to go. No friends close enough to take me and no other relatives I could turn to. Home, despite everything, seemed like my only option. The night before I planned to buy my ticket, Jack sent me a video. In it, my entire family sat around our dining room table drinking and laughing. They were taking bets on how long before I would come crawling back home. I give him another week tops, Amanda giggled. Nah, hell be calling for a ride tomorrow, Jack countered. Hess too soft. My father raised his glass. To teaching Graham some backbone, he toasted. The camera panned to my mother, who was laughing harder than I had seen in years. He probably hasn't even figured out how to do laundry yet, she said between laughs. The final clip showed Jack speaking directly to the camera. You know why we're doing this, right, Grammy boy? Because you're pathetic. You've always been the weak link in this family. Time to toughen up or get left behind for good. I bet you anything hell be back on our doorstep like a whimpering puppy before the month is out. I sat on the break room couch watching their faces contort with laughter at my expense. Something inside me broke and reformed in that moment. A clarity I had never known before washed over me. These people, they were never going to change. They were never going to love me the way family should, and I deserved better. The next morning, I went to the bus station as planned. But instead of buying a ticket to Dallas, I purchased one to Seattle. Alex had mentioned his cousin ran a restaurant there and might need help. It was the furthest city I could afford to reach. Before boarding the bus, I sent a final message to my family group chat. I will not be coming home. Ever. Someday you'll realize what you've thrown away, and by then it will be too late. Then I blocked all their numbers, turned off my phone, and boarded the bus to my new life. The journey to Seattle was long and uncomfortable, but every mile that passed put distance between me and the people who had discarded me like garbage. I arrived with just $11 in my pocket, Alex's cousin's phone number, and a determination that burned like fire in my chest. The cousin Tony ran a busy Italian restaurant in Seattle's Pike Place market area. He was nothing like Alex, entirely business, no sentimentality. But he needed a dishwasher and I needed a job. I started that same day. I found a room in a rundown boarding house where most residents were either elderly people on fixed incomes or others like me running from something. My room was barely bigger than a closet, with just enough space for a twin bed and a small dresser. The bathroom was shared with the entire floor, but it was mine, paid for with money I had earned myself. For the first few months, I did nothing but work and sleep. I picked up extra shifts whenever possible, volunteered to cover for anyone who called out sick. I lived on the meals provided during shifts and cheap ramen the rest of the time. Every penny I saved went into an emergency fund I kept hidden in my room. Never again would I be completely helpless. 6 months into my new life, the head chef at Tony's restaurant noticed my interest in cooking. During slow periods, Chef Sarah would show me techniques, explain recipes, let me taste, and critique dishes in development. I soaked up knowledge like a sponge, practicing knife skills after hours with vegetables that would otherwise be thrown away. You have good instincts, Sarah told me one day. Ever consider culinary school? I laughed bitterly. I could barely afford rent, let alone education. But her question planted a seed. What if I could learn advance, build something for myself? I began going to the public library on my rare days off, reading everything I could about cooking, restaurant management, and business. I watched online tutorials, took notes, practiced techniques during prep shifts. Tony noticed my initiative. and slowly gave me more responsibilities beyond dishwashing, prepping ingredients, making simple sauces, eventually cooking on the line during busy periods. A year passed, then two. I moved to a slightly better apartment, one with my own bathroom at least. I opened a bank account in my new city-built credit, created the foundations of a life. I made a few friends at work, though I kept my past vague. Just family trouble was all I would say when asked why I had come to Seattle alone at 18. In my third year in Seattle, I met Jessica. She was a regular customer at the restaurant, always sitting at the bar with a book ordering the same pasta dish. One night when the restaurant was slow, I sent out a new dessert I'd been experimenting with compliments of the kitchen. She loved it, asked to meet the chef. Instead of Sarah, I went out to her table. "This is incredible," she said, pointing to the lemon ricotta cake I'd made. "Is it a new menu item?" "Not yet," I admitted. "Just something I'm working on." We talked until closing time. Jessica was a literature professor at the local university, intelligent and passionate about stories. She never pushed when I was reluctant to share details about my past, accepting my present self at face value. It was refreshing healing in a way I hadn't expected. By my 5th year in Seattle, I had worked my way up to sous chef. I had a solid apartment, a reliable car, and was taking business classes at the community college. I had friends, a girlfriend who loved me, and colleagues who respected me. I had built something from nothing. Meanwhile, I knew my family had been trying to find me. In the early days, they'd called the police, filed missing persons reports. Not out of concern, I suspected, but because my disappearance made them look bad to their friends and neighbors. The son who vanished without a trace rather than return home. What would the country club members think? But I had been thorough in covering my tracks. New phone, new email, no social media presence. I had legally changed my last name from Davidson to Hayes, using my grandmother's maiden name. Graham Davidson had disappeared, and Graham Hayes had been born from the ashes. As the years passed, I continued to grow and thrive. By the 10-year mark, I had opened my own restaurant, a small but popular place specializing in modern American comfort food. Jessica and I had married and welcomed our son Daniel, named after her father. My restaurant received glowing reviews, even appearing in a national food magazine. The irony wasn't lost on me. My family had abandoned me to teach me a lesson to prove I was weak. Instead, they'd set me free. I'd found strength I never knew. I had built a life filled with genuine love and respect, something I'd never experienced in my childhood home. The values I established in my new life were the opposite of everything I'd grown up with. I prioritized honesty, emotional openness, and mutual support. Jessica and I resolved conflicts through communication, not manipulation. When Daniel was born, I promised myself, had never know the pain of being the family scapegoat, never question his worth or wonder if he was loved. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I still thought about them, not with longing, but with a sort of detached curiosity. Had they changed? Did they regret what they'd done? Did they ever truly look for me, or just go through the motions for appearance's sake? But these thoughts came less frequently as time passed, as my new life became more solid than my old one had ever been. 15 years had passed since that day at the Colorado gas station. My restaurant had expanded to 2 locations. Daniel was 6 years old, bright and confident in a way I had never been as a child. Jessica and I had built a beautiful home and a beautiful life together. Then came the email. It arrived on an ordinary Tuesday morning from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line simply read, "Found you." My first instinct was to delete it as spam, but something made me open it instead. Inside were several photographs. My father in a casket, looking much older than I remembered. My mother, hair now gray, standing beside it. Jack and Amanda with spouses and children I had never met. And most shockingly, a screenshot of a phone log. 107 missed calls over 15 years. Calls I had never received because they had been made to a number that no longer belonged to me. The message below the photos was simple. "We never stopped looking for you. Please call this number if you're reading this." I stared at my computer screen for what felt like hours. My past, which I had so carefully walled off, had found a way back to me. The family that had thrown me away now wanted to reclaim me. That evening, I showed Jessica the email. In our 10 years together, I'd told her pieces of my story, but never the full truth. Now I laid it all bare, the cruel pranks, the abandonment, the video of them laughing about it. She listened without interruption, holding my hand tightly in hers. "Whatever you decide to do, I'm with you," she said when I finished. "You don't owe them anything, Graham. Not a response, not forgiveness, nothing." Her support steadied me. I spent days thinking about how to respond or whether to respond at all. Part of me wanted to delete the email and continue my life as if it had never arrived. Another part, a part I wasn't entirely comfortable acknowledging, wanted answers. After a week of deliberation, I replied with just 3 questions. Why did you do it? Why are you contacting me now? What do you want from me? The response came within minutes, an eagerness that surprised me. It was from Amanda, explaining that our father had died of a heart attack 3 months ago. In going through his things, they'd found journal entries about me about his regret. She claimed they'd all changed, that losing me had forced them to confront their toxicity as a family. Jack had gone to therapy. My mother had fallen into depression after I disappeared. They wanted a chance to apologize, to make amends if possible. I didn't believe it, not entirely. People like my family didn't change fundamentally. But curiosity got the better of me. I agreed to a video call, one call, no promises beyond that. Seeing their faces after 15 years was surreal. My mother looked frail, diminished, without my father's dominating presence beside her. Amanda seemed genuinely emotional, tears streaming down her face as soon as she saw me. Jack was more composed, but there was something different in his expression, a humility I had never associated with him. "Graham," my mother breathed, her hand reaching toward the screen as if she could touch me through it. "It's really you." For the next hour they talked. They apologized. They explained, though their explanations rang hollow to my ears. A family tradition of toughening up the youngest child, they claimed. A horrible mistake that spiraled out of control. They had expected me to come home within days, a week at most. When I didn't, they panicked, started searching, but I had vanished completely. Jack admitted the video had been his idea, his voice tight with shame. "I was such an asshole," he said quietly. "There are no excuses." Amanda told me how they had hired private investigators over the years, how my disappearance had fractured the family. My mother had never forgiven my father, had separated from him for years before his declining health brought her back. I listened to it all without revealing much about my own life. When they asked questions, I gave minimal answers. Yes, I was married. Yes, I had a child. Yes, I was successful in my career. No details, no openings for them to insert themselves into the life I had built without them. At the end of the call, they asked if they could see me in person. My mother especially seemed desperate for a real reunion. "I need time to think about it," I said, neither committing nor refusing outright. The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted. These people had inflicted deep wounds that had taken years to heal. But they were also connected to me by blood, by shared history, however painful. Did I owe myself closure? Did I owe Daniel knowledge of his extended family, however flawed? After much discussion with Jessica, who supported whatever I decided, but cautioned me to protect my hard-won peace, I agreed to a limited meeting. My mother and Amanda could visit Seattle. They would stay in a hotel, not our home. We would meet in public places. And Jack would not be included in this first visit. I wasn't ready to face the architect of my abandonment. When they arrived the following month, I was struck by how small they seemed. In my memories, they had loomed large and powerful. Now they were just people, aging, fallible people who had made terrible choices. I introduced them to Jessica and Daniel in a restaurant, not my own. They were appropriately complimentary, appropriately respectful. My mother couldn't stop staring at Daniel, her only grandchild shed never met. Over the course of their 3-day visit, we had difficult conversations about the past. They answered my questions as honestly as they seemed capable of. I learned that after I disappeared, their perfect family facade had crumbled. Neighbors had whispered. Friends had distanced themselves. The shame and guilt had eaten away at them all differently. On their final day, my mother asked the question I had been expecting: "Will you ever come back to Texas, even for a visit?" I looked at her directly, making sure she understood. My answer was final. "No, my home is here. My family is here. I built this life from nothing after you left me with nothing. I won't risk what I have by going back to where I was broken." She nodded, tears in her eyes, but acceptance in her expression. I see that now. You're stronger than any of us ever were. After they left, I felt strangely lightened. Not healed exactly. There would always be scars, but validated. I had survived. I had thrived, and I had done it all without them. I established careful boundaries moving forward. Occasional video calls, holiday cards, minimum information about our daily lives. It wasn't forgiveness, not really, but it was a form of peace. I could acknowledge their existence without giving them power over me again. The irony of it all still strikes me sometimes. My family abandoned me to teach me a cruel lesson about independence. Instead, they taught me that family isn't always blood. That strength comes in many forms, not just the harsh toughness they valued. That sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are so you can choose a different path. I built a life based on everything they weren't. And in doing so, I found everything I had always needed. Have you ever had to leave something behind to find your true path forward? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in unexpected places. And if you're watching this while feeling trapped in toxic relationships, remember Graham found his way out, so can you. Thanks for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into.